Good evening, everyone. So this is Father Scott. It's 6 o'clock on Wednesday, March the 3rd. Spring break is around the corner. I hope that you're going to get some time away to rest, relax, and relax with no snow. That would be the goal. Unless you're going skiing, then I hope you have great snow. The intention of tonight is to have a town hall. I gave you an opportunity to ask a bunch of questions, and we have a ton of them. So I have about 30 questions that you've asked. We've lumped them into like categories. And if it's all right with you, I'm gonna get started. So 52 people on the call. And again, this is being recorded. This is Father Scott, head of school at TMI, and honored to have some time with you in this kind of fireside chat town hall. A couple of days ago, March 1st, marked my beginning of my 5th year as the head of school. I started serving in this role March 1st of 2017. And hard to believe that four full years have gone by, and I begin my 5th year just 2 days ago. Still am honored and humbled by the opportunity to serve this great community, a community that I dearly, dearly love and love coming to work every day. Feedback is important to us. Your opinions matter, your thoughts matter, your concerns matter. When you reply to parent surveys, I want you to know that we read every single line on the parent survey. My senior leadership team and I discuss your thoughts. Your feedback is important to us. And so having a town hall where you could ask questions and give us feedback was a no-brainer. I do want to give you some survey feedback because I think it's important for you to hear. We'll send a total kind of synopsis of the parent survey, which we did in January. But just so you know, kind of big picture, 93% of our parents say that they would strongly recommend TMI to one of their friends if they were asking for a school. That's a great number. That's an extremely high number for an independent school parent survey. 93% parent satisfaction rating is extremely high. What I find even more impressive is that 86% of our students would recommend TMI to one of their friends. You can't get 86% of teenagers to agree on anything. So 86% satisfaction rating with our students, again, is extremely high for independent schools. I'm in conversations with my independent school head peers all over the state, and those numbers are really impressive and just show how much our parents and our students value and love our community. And we value your commitment to TMI. The reality is that in a normal non-COVID year, we would see a lot more of you on campus. Because of COVID, we haven't seen you very often. And so having an opportunity to have some feedback in this format makes a lot of sense. I'm gonna start with some overall comments, some of which came from questions you submitted, and then I'm gonna go directly to some specific questions that you all submitted in advance of this town hall. First of all, I wanna talk about our facilities and how did we do with Snowvid, as some people are calling it, or snowpocalypse. Or the week of snow and ice in San Antonio. Our campus was hit pretty hard. You obviously weren't on campus Monday and Tuesday after that was over because of the impact to our campus. The residential life program was impacted the most. Our staff and kids were awesome. They rose to the occasion. We actually had to move our residential life students and the house parents to a hotel for almost a week because of the damage to those buildings. The music room, the ceramics room, the yearbook room, and then all of the dormitories had significant damage. They're undergoing restoration efforts right now. We'll be in temporary spaces for the rest of the academic year for most of those places. Some of that was water damage from equipment being turned back on. This may be more information than you want, but you may be interested to know that our HVAC system is a chilled water loop system. So water runs our campus, it runs our heat, it runs our cooling. That's a lot of pipes all over the campus, and that created a lot of damage. We're cleaning that up and we're doing it little by little, but we're back in school, as you know, even though all the dorms are not up and running, and certainly some of those fine arts spaces are not and may not be for the rest of the year. It's also important that you know that our Board of Governors is updating our master plan this spring, and by April, we will have a board meeting to hopefully approve a master plan, and then that will be public to share with you. And so as we look at our facilities, and I'll talk more about the Walker Innovation Center in a second, we are looking at long-term master planning for the entire campus. And so as we look at buildings that were damaged, some of them make more sense to work into the long-term master plan. And I'll update you on that as we go forward. I want to tell you a little bit about admissions. Admissions is really exciting this time of year. We've got a ton of inquiries. We have prospective families looking at us from all over the city and beyond as families explore the best independent school option for their children. We really have strong enrollment numbers, new families for the 21-22 school year. We're also seeing a ton of interest from some of our peer schools, St. Mary's Hall, Saks, Cornerstone, Geneva. Parents from those schools are looking at us strong, and we will get dozens of students from those 4 schools who are hearing what's going on at TMI, seeing what's going on at TMI, really hearing from you as their peers. And it's exciting to be in the admissions office. It's a hopping place out here for tours, and Aaron Hawkins and Christina Prieto are really busy right now with all the prospective families. I also can tell you that what we're hearing is how excited our parents are about the Walker Innovation Center. That space is really attractive to our families. I don't know if your sons and daughters are in innovation and design classes in there, but a lot of really cool stuff coming out there, and families that tour are very impressed by our commitment to design thinking, to creativity, to problem solving. Families are attracted to our commitment to the whole child. We care that our students are safe, engaged, challenged, nurtured, and families are impressed that we're not in a cohort model. A lot of schools that have been on campus all year in a COVID world have done a cohort model where you and your 6 students or 8 students or 10 students are together all day, every day, and the teacher comes in, but you stay with those students every day. And the fact that our students are out and about and taking 7 different periods and moving around the campus is very different than a lot of schools, and families are attracted to that. And of course, our return to athletics next year, the academic integrity and the academic opportunities, and then the safety of our campus continues to be attractive to families looking at next year. We're, again, you are the best cheerleader for our school. You talk to your friends about TMI, and we're grateful that you do, because we're gonna have a great year next year, and enrollment's gonna be very strong. And although it's not the TMI we remember, I'm really proud of the TMI today, even in a COVID world. Our faculty and staff have really stepped up and dedicated themselves to making this year as great as possible. And I'll say more about that in just a minute. Let me talk a little bit about the rest of this academic year, and then we'll talk about next year. So in terms of the rest of this academic year, the first thing I want to say is if you're in remote instruction, come back. We miss you. Here's some numbers. Our total enrollment today, 6th through 12th grade, is 457. Of those 457 students that we have on campus, 26% of them are currently remote, and 0 of our students are being quarantined at this point. Our mask wearing, our hand washing, our social distancing, our rapid tests that we have on campus have all been advantageous to us, have all helped us remain as safe as possible. And we have no kids in quarantine. And that's really, really exciting. So 26% remote by choice. The way that breaks down is about 339 students on campus every day and about 118 choosing to be remote. Now, the way it breaks down per grade, this is pretty interesting. So of the 118 students that are remote, 3 6th graders, 3 7th graders, 4 8th graders. So only 10 kids from the entire middle school have chosen to be remote. In the upper school, which is a lot larger enrollment, I'll give it that. In the upper school, it's 24 freshmen, 16 sophomores, 32 juniors, and 36 seniors. So the largest group that is off campus remotely is our juniors and seniors. And having a senior son, I just want to speak for a minute to that choice. If you have medical reasons that you're staying home, if your child is immunocompromised, if you have loved ones that are immunocompromised, we get it. We're going to continue to offer you the option to stay home for this academic year. But if you're simply home because it's convenient, come back. We are not a remote instruction community. That is not what TMI is. That is not TMI at our best. We are better when you are here. School is better for you when you are here. So unless you have medical reasons, I cannot require you in this COVID world to come back. I'm just encouraging you because it's fun on campus and spring is going to be even more fun. So come back. I want to pause for just a second and remind you that you can put any questions or comments you have in the chat along the way, and I'll take a breath every once in a while and just make sure that I haven't lost you 10 minutes in, all right? And we've got a lot more to go through. So again, use the chat if you have questions or comments. So continuing on this theme of this year, spring break is around the corner. A lot of questions have been coming our way about travel. If you're traveling over spring break, we're gonna ask you. We can't really require you because I don't have the capacity to figure out what 480 people are doing for spring break. It would be impossible for me to ask you what your travel plans are and then manage that. If you're traveling internationally, you're going to have to show a negative COVID test to return to the country. That's airline policy. That's federal. That's not, obviously that's not Scott's decision. That's the current regulations. If you're traveling domestically, we would just ask you to quarantine when you return for up to 7 days, get a COVID test on day 3 or 4, and come back. That's our recommendation. That's the CDC recommendation. We sent an email out about that today. We also sent an email out today about mask wearing. Many of you have asked us, with Governor Abbott's opening up the state next week, will TMI open up TMI in terms of mask wearing? And the email that you got today stated clearly that we don't see any reason to change what we're doing because we think what we're doing is working. So we'll continue to follow local guidelines and CDC recommendations for schools. I don't see any reason to stop the screening every day, the mask wearing every day, or the social distancing every day for now. It's working on our campus. Again, not only do we have 0 quarantines, we've had 0 cases of community spread that we can verify. We've had a lot of people, or we've had people get positive COVID tests. We've had students and teachers and family members who have been COVID positive, but it is impossible to say that that came from spread on campus. So no way to say that. So we're proud of that. So if all that's working, there's no reason to back down. So we'll keep wearing masks, we'll keep social distancing, and we'll probably do that till the end of the school year and then reevaluate heading into next year. Also, as I talk about this year, spring sports are happening. Most of our spring sports are outdoors. And so baseball, softball, track, golf, lacrosse, all are happening and doing very, very well. Our sports teams have done a great job of staying safe and finishing their season. As a matter of fact, our boys soccer team won the state semifinal game yesterday and is back in the state championship. They have 3 state championships in the last 4 years. Friday, they play at 2 o'clock for their 4th state championship in 5 years. Very impressive, very proud of our soccer team. They've stayed COVID free, they've played all their games, and they're playing for state next week. We have Founders Day on April 23rd, which is a really fun community day for our kids. And we're having graduation on campus, May 20th, 2021 for our senior class. It will likely be on the football field. We will have guests, we will spread out, we will wear masks, we will social distance. But as much as we can be back to quote normal, we are. So come back to campus unless you just can't for medical reasons. All right, let's talk about next year. Many of you have asked me about vaccinations for next year. Well, first of all, when it comes to student vaccination, it's just too early to speculate on what will be required. There's no data out there to suggest at this point what's going to be required of children, of students in terms of vaccination. I'm also have no intention at this point of mandating vaccination for our faculty, although we will strongly encourage it. I do have some great news though. About half, as a matter of fact, it's 65 of our current faculty and staff have already been fully vaccinated and received both doses. That's thanks in large part to a TMI parent and physician, Dr. Namish Patel, who has been amazing and helped us get all of our 1B faculty and staff vaccinated fully. That's 65 of them. And if you just saw the news today, teachers are now on the list for immediate vaccination. And so we have a date set up for the Wednesday after spring break where any faculty and staff, that's what the state is, the health department has opened it up for teachers. So we anticipate that by the end of the year, all of our faculty and staff will be vaccinated, fully vaccinated, which is really, really great news. Let's talk about academics next year. And this is very important for you to hear. We have no intention of offering remote instruction as an option next year. Let me say that again. I have no intention of offering remote instruction as an option next year. We will continue to offer it as an option through this year. Don't feel like it's the right timing to tell you that you have to come to campus, but next year it will not be an option unless you have extreme circumstances. So if there's a medically high risk reason why your child cannot come to campus, then there are exceptions, just as we have exceptions pre-COVID. So if you have a student, we anticipate having very few students who will meet that criteria. But if you have some concerns heading into next year about your child being on campus and you want them to be remote, there is a process to apply for that, but it will be an exception, not the rule. So heading into next year, we anticipate 100% of our students will be on campus and our teachers on campus for instruction. What we learned this year is that we can pivot in a hurry to hybrid learning if we need to. And if there's another spike or something happens and we need to pivot, we can do that. We learned that this year. So next year, plan on being on campus 5 days a week for instruction when we get back August 2021. Speaking of next year, I've got two small changes in the admin, or two changes in the admin, and one change in the faculty to tell you about. I say small because 3 total changes at this point is relatively small for a school our size. But these changes you need to know about. 2 members of my senior leadership team will not be returning. One of those is Ann Schaefer-Salinas, our current associate head of school. Ann has been at TMI 2 years. I'm grateful for Ann. I wish her all the best. I'm excited about what's next for her, and I'm excited about what's next for TMI. We have a really strong new Dean of Faculty joining us next year. We're changing the model of the Dean of Students and have some really fantastic candidates for the Dean of Students. We have amazingly strong department chairs and a fantastic faculty, most of which are returning, with the exception of one I'm about to tell you about. And we remain committed to our excellent educational community. So we will miss Ann, and I will update you along the way as how we move forward with replacing Ann, but Ann will not be returning next year. The other administrator that will not be returning next year is Tracy Carter. Tracy is in her 10th year, currently as the Dean of Community and Wellness. Prior to 2 years ago, when she became the Dean of Community and Wellness, Tracy started off as the Director of Academic Support. In that role, Tracy supported students who were struggling academically or students who were falling behind. Tracy moved to the Community and Wellness role, and we hired a learning specialist. In January, our learning specialist chose to leave TMI, and Tracy stepped back into that role and took over the course or the caseload from our learning specialist. We decided to restructure the learning specialist position and eliminate the Dean of Community and Wellness position. Community and Wellness is the responsibility of our entire community. It's a big shoes to fill in Tracy's absence, but we will do that. I offered Tracy the opportunity to return to her old role as the Director of Academic Support, and she declined. So I'm grateful for Tracy too, and excited about what's next for her. I can tell you that current teacher Lucy Adams, wonderful middle school teacher and passionate about academic support, has accepted my invitation to step into Tracy's old role of the Director of Academic Support. So Lucy will be supporting our students who learn differently. She'll be our person for that, and our academic commitment to all of our students remains strong. So we will miss Tracy and Ann, and I wanted to tell you about those 2 changes. The one faculty change at this point that I know about is Coach Gerald Alsheimer, who will not be returning as well. Coach G is currently one of our physical education teachers and our head basketball coach. G's been a valued member of our community for many years, and we wish him the best as well. I'll talk more about faculty turnover because somebody asked that question. So 3 out of 115, 2.6%, a relatively low number of turnover for any organization. All right, so that is my pause for now. I want to check the pulse, make sure you're awake, make sure you haven't dozed off, and I'm going to jump into your next set of questions. So that was the introductory remarks, and now I'm going straight to your questions. Now I'm gonna ask your questions in groups. So this group of questions is called Wednesdays / back on campus. So some of the questions in this category that you submitted are this: can we go back to school on Wednesdays during the final quarter of the year? Does TMI feel confident in a 21-22 school year of 5 days per week? Will we be on campus after spring break? Are there plans to make up for class experiences lost, such as trips? What are some of those experiences? Will some of those be made up in the future? So let me talk about Wednesdays, coming back after spring break, I think I just answered your question about the 21-22 school year. Yes, it will be a 5-day-a-week in-person learning. So let me answer your questions. And again, use the chat if you need clarification or if you have any comments. We will be on campus the week following spring break. You'll have the same choice after spring break that you have today. If you're traveling, if you're nervous that other people are traveling, you have the choice to go remote the week after spring break, just as you've had that choice all year. Again, I encourage those who traveled to quarantine, but I can't require that. But we will be on campus for those who choose to be on campus after spring break. And my recommendation and encouragement is that you come back. If you're nervous about it, you have the choice. Like all things, there's a diversity of thought on all things COVID. There's a lot of different opinions on all things COVID, even Wednesdays. We've learned a lot from COVID. I bet you've learned a lot in your organization or your businesses. Wednesdays, if you remember originally, were meant as a community day for a variety of reasons. Cleaning the campus, a break from remote instruction when we were all remote. Teachers needed a break because teaching remotely is exhausting, I can tell you that. I also want to say that Wednesdays were never intended to be a break from learning. They were just a break from in-person instruction. My son, as an example, had core every single Wednesday, and I'd go down there and I'd watch him work with his cadets. And there's no way you can say he wasn't learning. He just wasn't in a classroom. So I also want you to know that a lot of our families absolutely loved and appreciated community days, and some families have even petitioned that they stay in perpetuity. Had a lot of families who said, man, it's been great to have my kid home once a week, a little bit more intentional time. Students have talked about how the mental health how their mental health has been stronger this year because of Wednesdays. They can catch up on their work. They can work on projects. Teachers gave more project-based stuff on Tuesdays because they knew they were going to have Wednesdays. So Wednesdays have been helpful, and I do not regret having Wednesday community days. I think they've been a lifesaver for a lot of our students, and I think they've been a lifesaver for a lot of our teachers. I will say that I believe that keeping Wednesdays as community day, it's really best for our teachers. They're pretty exhausted, and they're, again, doing two jobs. I taught a 2-week psychology class, one period. So I taught one period for 2 weeks, and having 8 kids online and 7 kids in the classroom was difficult at best. I loved the teaching. I loved the interaction with the kids, but I really felt like I had to prepare 2 different lesson plans, and then really felt like my energy was pulled all the time. I did it for 2 weeks for one class, and my appreciation for my teachers who do it 5 periods a day the entire year leaps and bounds. We have amazing teachers. This has been a difficult year for them. So if I was only going to do what was best for the teachers, I would say we're keeping Wednesdays. But what I also know is I was leaning towards keeping Wednesdays until snowpocalypse or snowvid. So in snowvid, we lost 4 more days of instruction. And so because of that, I feel like the right thing to do is to find a balance. So I am announcing tonight that we're adding 4 instruction days. And just so you know, we're going to send out the notes on this. You don't have to write all this down, and we'll keep you posted. But we're going to add, of the remaining 9 weeks of school, really 8 Wednesdays of community day, we're going to add 4 of those Wednesdays back as instruction days. Those days are March 31st, April 7th, April 21st, and May 14th. So March 31st and April 7th are the Easter weeks. So we're going to be off for Good Friday. We're going to be off for Easter Monday, but the Wednesdays on those 2 weeks will have instruction. So it's still a 4-day week, but we're not going to give up the Wednesday, go to school on Thursday, be off on Friday, be off on Monday, off on Wednesday. So March 31st, we're in school. We'll be off Good Friday. We'll be off Easter Monday. Wednesday, April 7th, we'll be in school. The next one is April 21st. That's the Wednesday before Founders Day. We're going to have a fun day on Friday for Founders Day. So let's have an instruction day on Wednesday, April 21st. And then the last one is May 14th. That was going to be a reading day, which reading days are optional for high school students, upper school students. And we're now going to make that an instruction day. So we're adding back based on your request and your feedback. And I want to honor your requests. We're adding back March 31st, April 7th, April 21st, and May 14th as instruction days. I'm going to pause real quick because somebody asked on the facility stuff about Ewing and when will it open. It will be open after spring break. Ewing is one of our dorms. It's very close to being done. We're on pace for it to open right after spring break is over. Stephanie is texting me your questions on this other screen. So if you'll bear with me, I'm going to mute this chat with her so that you don't hear a bunch of dinging. Okay. All right. All right, back to the questions. Everybody still okay? I'm already tired of hearing myself talk. Are you tired of hearing me talk? No? Mr. Philbin says no, so I'm gonna keep going on. All right, here we go. Next, so that was the questions about Wednesdays and instruction. Again, next year we're in campus 5 days. This next 9 weeks, we're gonna split the difference and find 4 more days to come to school. All right, on pace with curriculum. So this questions are things like, how are we checking to ensure that students are on pace with where they need to be in their classes? We expect a stellar education. Are you delivering that? Questions about the minimum requirements for instruction days. How are we going to make up for lost time in the classroom? So let me tackle some of that, okay? So first of all, based on teacher feedback, believe it or not, we are on pace. So we got to remember that we're an independent school, which means as an independent school, we're not forced to teach to state standards. Essentially, we don't have to cover these things in a textbook to indicate that we've taught all the required material for that year. So as a result, we can teach age-appropriate skills to our students, and we can teach them the skills that they need to master in order to move on to the next level. So again, it's not about covering this amount of material for an independent school like TMI. It's about, did we teach them how to master these subjects? So for the courses where our teachers are concerned that there may be some knowledge gaps, they've already begun building in the makeup of those knowledge gaps into next year's curriculum, okay? So I'll get back to that in just a minute. We also have to remember that as an independent school, we don't have a minimum requirement of instruction days. Believe it or not, nobody's going to tell us that we don't have enough instruction days and therefore we can't give out our diplomas. Here's what does happen. We have an accreditation. We are accredited by dually by ISAS and SAES, Independent Schools Association of the Southwest and Southwestern Association of Episcopal Schools. So an independent school branch and an Episcopal school branch from the South. Our accreditation is actually next year. It was supposed to be this year. It got moved because of COVID. What that accreditation team will do is they'll come in and look at our academic objectives and our academic goals. And they'll ask, does TMI have adequate academic objectives and goals? And if they say, yeah, those goals are to the standards that we look for in an Episcopal independent school, great. The second question, do they have enough school days to accomplish those goals? So it's not for us about proving to the association that we've had X amount of school days. It's about proving to the association or showing the association our goals are significant, our commitment to academic integrity is significant. It's rigorous enough that it's the goals that and the mastery that we're trying to teach is high enough that we get the check mark from the accreditation. Now, can you do it in the days that you teach? Doesn't matter to them how many days it is, just matters to them that you're accomplishing your goals. So if we don't have to make up snow days or rain days, we just have to make sure that we're accomplishing the academic goals that we've set forth. So let me talk again about those academic goals. Our classes are on target to teach those desired skills. So you could say to me, wait a minute, Scott, you can't tell me that you covered everything you wanted to cover in a remote world with how many days you had off. And I would say to you, you're right. Maybe they read a few less books in English, or they wrote less papers in history, or they didn't get to do as many cool science projects. But that doesn't mean that they didn't get the core competencies and the opportunity to show mastery of a subject just because they didn't have the depth in a particular class. I also have the sense that the feeling of being behind largely comes from students who are learning remotely, because I'll be honest, I've watched my kids at home. When they're home, they're less engaged. I say this as a parent. This is not a critique of you and your children. If your children have been home all year and you think, man, my kid's doing pretty good remotely, then I need them to come teach lessons to my kids, because when my kids have been home remotely, They are not as engaged as they are in class. And so I get the sense that families that feel like their kids are really, really far behind or may be lacking, I get the sense that most of those are families that have chosen to be remote. That may not be totally true. So back to my point, I think it's not unreasonable for us to look at ways to add additional teaching days to next year's calendar, but I'm confident that your children have the skills that they need and the core competencies that they need to move on to next year. Then next year, with 5 days a week, all the time, I'm confident that we'll catch your kids right back up. And you know, the pastor in me wants to remind you that they learned a lot this year about a lot of other stuff outside of reading, writing, arithmetic, and science. And we'll get to that in just a little bit. Again, put your questions in the chat if I haven't answered them fully. All right, next topic, tuition, money. Everybody wants to know about money. So let me talk about this for just a minute. Many of you asked the question, will there be a credit for applied to next year, or a refund for services not received, like lunch or uniforms never worn or shuttle services? You've asked about, is TMI a good steward of the tuition money? And you've asked how the pandemic has affected TMI financially in regards to our budget. I want to say to you that we place a huge priority on being good stewards. It is really important to us that we manage the finances of this school well. You deserve that from us. We are not a rich school. TMI does not have this huge endowment that kicks off millions of dollars, and we sit here and have an excess of cash every year. That is not us. We have to manage our expenses well. We have to. And as we've said a million times, tuition does not cover the full cost of education for your child. Remember, we only have 3 ways to have revenue on this campus, to use a business model. Tuition dollars, how much is tuition? How many people are paying tuition, enrollment, or fundraising? Those are the only 3 levers we can pull to add revenue. We understand that tuition is a premium, and going up 3% is really difficult on you. When enrollment, we also don't want to get too big and hurt our class size average. So we don't want enrollment to go too big. So tuition, enrollment, and fundraising are kind of this 3-legged stool that make up all things revenue for a school. We are carefully evaluating our expenses every year, all the time. Even our classes. We look at every subject every year. We look at how many students are going to take how many classes in each department and what's the right size class. We can't have classes that are too small, and we can't have classes that are too big. If we've got a teacher that teaches 5 sections of English and there's 4 kids in each class, that tells me I probably can restructure it and move those students in another way and make a tough decision to reduce 1 FTE in a department. We do that in every department, in every class, every year. We want to make sure your classes are small enough that your kids get the attention they deserve, but big enough that it's not a financial burden impacting us down the road because we're overstaffed in the department. We want to make sure the porridge is just right. So in the tuition letter you received in March, it said this regarding a credit or a rebate. It said, we will calculate and issue a rebate to current year families based on the actual savings related to services not received, such as lunch on remote days. I also want to say I'm really happy that we're going to be able to do something for our families to give back to you for that unused services. But I also want you to know that this is not the norm. Matt Duke, our Chief Business Officer, and I have been on a bunch of webinars with our peers at independent schools throughout Texas and beyond. And just the other day, Matt was talking to all of his peer business office leaders at independent schools, and Matt said, hey, let me ask you how you guys are doing the rebate for unused lunches or unused travel. And I mean, if there was 100 schools on that campus, on that webinar, 98 of them were like, you're doing what? You're giving your family's money back? No way, we are not doing that. So I just want you to know that it is not the norm in independent schools. I would be shocked if you talk to another independent school in your friend group that their independent school is offering a rebate or a credit based on unused lunches, et cetera. So I just wanted you to know that up front. But again, I'm thrilled that we're able to do this. I'll tell you more about what that number is when we get closer to the end of the year. I think you know this, but TMI applied for and received a forgivable loan under the PPP. And that money, frankly, it saved TMI from having to make cuts that would be so deep to our program that we might not have ever recovered from it. The PPP money really saved us. Prior to the pandemic, we were enjoying the best admission season we had ever had. We opened the 1920 school year with the largest enrollment in school history. We were on pace to beat that this year prior to the pandemic. But when that pandemic hit, we were pretty optimistic that this raise in enrollment was going to help us recover and be able to support our faculty who have not had a raise in 2 years, not one penny raise for our faculty in 2 years. That's why we had to increase tuition for this year. A large reason for the increase in tuition this year is to be able to support our faculty and give them the raise they deserve, especially after the year that they've had. And frankly, we'll probably have to raise tuition again. We'll try to make that increase as small as possible in that three-legged stool, but it's the reality of independent school finances. However, we hope that enrollment growth, especially in the middle school, which we've done a lot of promoting of our middle school to grow that program and to max out that enrollment. We hope that the enrollment growth, as well as a culture of philanthropy, you got a video from the annual fund, will help take the pressure off of the reliance on a tuition rate increase in future years. So, as we said before, in the announcement of the 2021-2022 tuition rates, we will evaluate any actual surplus from operating savings, and then we will rebate a substantial portion of that back to you, families. The business office has already started kind of an analysis of how we will do this. We'll request approval from the board at our April meeting, and then probably mid-April, you'll hear from us on how we will attack and divide that any surplus that there is and credit that back to you. And again, thank you for trusting us. And I'm sorry that it hasn't been the year that you wanted it to be. It hasn't been that year for us either. And frankly, our expenses, even though we haven't been here on campus as much, don't go down as much as you would think. And we've had added expenses on top of that. So, but we want to get back to you what we can. All right, I'm pausing. Everybody still there? Anybody fall asleep when I start talking about money? Okay, all right, I'll continue. Next question is politics. Oh my gosh, we're going from money to politics. This ought to be really fun. So questions just around political climate on our campus. One parent said, I have serious concerns that traditional conservative values are being discriminated. Ironically, the other question is, I have concerns that progressive values are being discriminated. And so what is TMI's policy when it comes to politics on campus and in the classroom? So I wouldn't say several, but a handful of questions about the political climate in the classroom. In particular, what do we tell our teachers about talking to our students about politics? All right, let me tackle this one. So obviously we're a diverse community. In the election, we saw from the popular vote just how divided our country is. Our campus is probably a pretty good microcosm of the country. I found this data. This is interesting. So think about where TMI is located geographically. Bexar County was 60-40 for Biden. Kendall County was 75-25 for Trump. And we sit right in the middle of these two counties. It's a pretty good microcosm of where TMI fits. We sit on this border, and our families and our teachers and frankly our students reflect this diversity. So some in our community would say TMI is way too progressive, and others of you would say TMI is way too conservative. And I think we sit right in the middle of our Episcopal identity. One quick story: when I was in seminary, I had to take an ethics class from a professor whom I wholeheartedly disagreed with. I realized about a week into class that I disagreed with this guy's ethical perspective. And I went to my advisor and I said, I don't think I can stay in Professor Monty's class. And my advisor, Father Smith, said, so you're only going to interact with people the rest of your life that you agree with? You're not going to have conversations with people you disagree with the rest of your life? Now, I realized I was 23 years old and in a graduate program in seminary, and your children are 12 through 18 and in middle school and high school. But I want to say that our children have to be exposed to conversations with people they disagree with, because they're going to have those conversations for the rest of their life. Learning how to have those conversations is part of our mission in raising servant leaders who are compassionate and competent, problem-solving, empathetic human beings. Now, hear me loud and clear. What we should never do as educators in any classroom or any venue is seek to convert students to our political party or shame families for their political affiliation. It is not okay for our progressive faculty, nor is it okay for our conservative faculty to do so. So, what we are bound to do is love our neighbor. What we are bound to do is seek to understand our neighbor. So I think having conversations about political differences or viewpoints or ideologies or cultural movements are important and frankly appropriate for a 6th grade through 12th grade school that seeks to raise competent, culturally sensitive, aware human beings who are going to go out into a world that's going to expect them to be able to talk about the things that we're talking about. If we are not giving our conservative students tools to understand their progressive neighbors and our progressive students tools to understand their conservative neighbors, then we are not living into our mission. But I want to say again that our faculty policy is really clear regarding the expectations in the classroom. And if you have specific examples of faculty or staff whom you believe have crossed the line, we want to know. So you would reach out to Ms. Schaefer-Salinas, or Mr. Ridewood, who is our Dean of Faculty, Bob Ridewood, who is the Dean of Faculty, or myself. So if you have specific examples, we want to hear them. But as far as engaging in conversations with people they disagree with, I think that's really good for us and for them. All right, student life questions. These are pretty easy ones. Sports, lockers, lunch, even dress code, chapel. So let me kind of tick these off. Will we be having varsity sports next year? Absolutely. We've had after football and cheer, which were in August, everything was new. We were learning a lot. The schools we were playing against were dropping like flies. We made the tough decision to cancel varsity football and cheer. Since then, we've had successful seasons in all sports, state championship in swimming, hopefully a state championship in soccer, deep runs in the playoffs and other sports. We've done very, very well athletically, and we will continue to do that next year, including middle school. So we have no anticipation or belief that we will cancel sports in any way. Lockers will be available next year. I understand kids are carrying heavy 50-pound backpacks and their 40-pound 6th grade self, but for this year, we're going to stick with the no lockers. A dress code. What you may not know about the dress code is that the PPP funds requires us to make some changes to, when we receive the PPP funds, we opened ourselves up to federal funding, which comes with some expectations for how we conduct some things when it comes to Title IX or other federal acts. One of those is hair length. So you can't require boys to have a hair dress code and not girls to have a dress code in a public school. You can do it at an independent school, but you can't do it at an independent school that has PPP funds. Well, we had PPP funds this year. So next year, we will rein back in some of the hair for boys. We do not expect to be in all kids high and tight like they're in the core. If they're not in the core, they don't have to have a high and tight. But for boys, you will see a little bit more conservative hair policy for next year. And I'm sorry if your son loves his ponytail. He got to enjoy it this year. Chapel, students are in chapel right now. They're rotating. I'll admit seniors get to be in chapel more than anybody because half the time the speaker in chapel is a senior, and we want the seniors to be able to see their classmates give the chapel talk. But we've already begun rotating advisories through chapel for the in-person experience. I'll admit it's nothing like traditional TMI chapel, having 100 people spread out over a chapel that seats 600. The energy's not there, but at least kids are in chapel every day and they're rotating through there. Transportation will return to normal next year. I know a lot of you who have kids in sports have been asked to drive your kids to those sports or to those events to cut down on the kids on a bus, but that will all return to quote normal next year. All right, we're nearing the end. Are you with me? You got 10 more minutes in you? Can you make it? All right. Other student-focused questions. This is an interesting question, which I think is very relevant. This question says, our students are part of a generation defined by YouTube and social media. Up to 85%, this is the question, I don't know this data, but I'm assuming it's true. Up to 85% of our students want to be influencers and have current role model influencers who often brag about dropping out of school on social media. How can TMI help parents reach out to students about the importance of hard work and college? I would say that we actually do this in every facet of our school, in the core, in the classroom, in sports, and advisory. We start college counseling conversations with our kids in 9th grade. I would say that who we are as a school is all about hard work and preparing for college and life. We have begun this year doing, or last year we began it, we had to cut it a little bit short because of COVID, but it will come back, is alumni career panels. We've been able to have alumni come in various fields from a variety of different industries and give alumni presentations for our students so that they learn what kind of jobs are out there. So I think that we will continue to hold the bar high for our students to work hard. All right, faculty, staff, how can students and or parents provide feedback on the teachers? What opportunity does TMI provide for parents to formally evaluate the faculty? This is a tough one, but I'm gonna be honest with you because I think you can handle it. You're not in the classroom. So we want the students to evaluate the teachers, not the parents to evaluate the teachers. Let me say more about that. COVID has delayed for us a process that was an internal teacher evaluation process evaluation. We've revamped the teacher evaluation process and it will be new next year. It was supposed to be new this year. It didn't happen because of COVID. We've also added a new Dean of Faculty position for next year. That'll be public in right after spring break. The Dean of Faculty is the coach or leader of the faculty, responsible for faculty support, faculty mentorship, onboarding new faculty, faculty retention. If faculty are having trouble with classroom discipline or instruction, the Dean of Faculty is essentially the master teacher for the faculty. We have a fantastic Dean of Faculty coming next year. I can't wait for you to meet this person, and it'll be announced in a couple of weeks. But I'll tell you this about the evaluation tool that you're asking about, parents. Whoever asked this question, I'm not familiar with any school, public or independent, that has a process for parents to evaluate their child's teacher, maybe in an elementary school or something else, but not in an independent school like ours. So what are your tools for giving us feedback on faculty? First of all, the parent survey. We read every line on that survey, we discuss it, and we take it seriously. So please let us know. And parents, you are always welcome to contact administration about faculty. I'll tell you this, anonymous surveys are not helpful. They're not. We want conversation, not anonymity. We don't need anonymous surveys. We want to follow up with you. We want to talk to you. We want you to follow up with your teacher. Please, if your child is having a hard time with the teacher, start with the teacher. Now, I'll talk about my own household, and I think it's probably true, but I'm not throwing your kids under the bus. My kids tend to exaggerate about their teachers. They tend to say, she hates me, he hates me, they didn't prepare me for this. There's an exaggeration. I understand that you want to protect your children, but let's assume positive intent and reach out to the teacher. I cannot tell you how many stories I've heard from my kids about their teacher that when I ask them to verify it and they go back and they say, oh no, that was fine. That's not what Mrs. Smith or Mr. Smith meant to say. Totally fine. So there's a lot of assumptions sometimes. Oh, so please encourage your children to talk to their teachers. If you need to intervene because your child didn't get the outcome that they were looking for, or you had hoped for, you should step in at times. But I would ask that when you step in, you start with the teacher and you extend the same grace and respect to our teachers that you want them to show to you and your students. And I just want you to remind you that we're professional. Talk to us. I have heard parents say, well, I know that if I call this teacher and offer them feedback, they're going to give my kid a bad grade. They're going to hold it over my kid's head. And I want to say, oh my gosh, do you really believe that? Do you believe that TMI has teachers that if they received feedback from you about their child, they're going to punish your child? If that happens, I want to know, because those teachers won't be at TMI. That's not who we are. We are professionals. We are a community. We need feedback. We foster that. If you believe for a second that by talking to your child's teacher about your child is going to end up in your child being punished by that teacher, call me. 210-288-4481. That is my cell phone number. Call me, because it's not going to happen. And it's unacceptable if it does, okay? Talk to your teachers. They love your kids. We have fantastic teachers. They will support your children. And if you have trouble, reach out to the administration and we'll take care of it. All right, do you expect significant teacher turnover next year? No, is the answer. I told you about 2 administrators and 1 faculty member that are not returning. Salary letters for the entire faculty and staff go out on Friday, and we expect all faculty to return. A question about the new dorms. I answered that in the master planning question. A new dormitory is going to be on the list of the master plan. In what timeline, I can't answer, but we need a new dorm, and it should happen as soon as we get the funding for it, which reminds me of this. You need to know that 100% of the funding for the Walker Innovation Center came from major gifts. We did not use tuition dollars to build new construction. We don't do that. So we're not raising tuition so we can pay for shiny new buildings. We were able to pay for that building in its entirety based off of the generosity of a few families and a major gift campaign. And we'll continue to pay for new construction out of capital campaigns or major gift campaigns. All right, in closing, what lasting changes, Scott, do you predict for the students in future years? I think we've learned a lot from COVID. I really do believe that some things about schools will never be the same for the better. I'll say this about us. I think we are now solution-based more than ever. We have figured out how to find the next best thing. This didn't work? Okay, let's try the next best thing. We don't have water on campus, we got to go in another direction. We have kids quarantined, we've got to go in another direction. We are solution-based, and I'm proud of us for that. We can't do X, well then what can we do? And then we do Y. So I think moving forward, we'll continue to be solution-based, which I think is very important. I have a list of things which I call COVID keeps. What's going to stay after COVID? I think we've learned a lot about technology in the classroom, how to use more technology in the classroom appropriately. I think we've learned virtual events are very effective. You probably won't have near as many business meetings in person as you had, and we probably will be able to offer way more alumni events and virtual events because of technology. I also think that we've learned how to be more personal and have smaller events. I think we've had more collaboration between our faculty and our staff with all hands on deck. You look out at pickup or drop off when you come in the morning, and those are both faculty and staff members out there working together. Those are some of the things that will stay after COVID. Senior parents, I'll say this, having a senior in my house, COVID was difficult. And if you lost a loved one in COVID, I'm tremendously sorry for your loss. I'm not trying to say that COVID was a good thing. What I am saying is that good things came out of COVID. And you have had your senior child at home with you in a way that you would not have had in a traditional year. I've loved having, I'm gonna cry, I can't believe it. I'm gonna miss Parker Brown. My senior is graduating. I'm gonna miss Parker Brown. But I got to spend a whole year with way more time with that child than I ever would have if school was in a more traditional way. I did not anticipate crying, but I love my son, and I think there have been some gifts. And I think, I hope that's one thing that's come out for you. We will do a senior sunset parade. It was a great idea last year. We did this really cool thing with our seniors. We'll do it again. I also think looking at what will look differently, school will look differently. I think there'll be more creativity in the classroom. I think we'll be able to create learning experiences that just don't happen in traditional classrooms. But I really believe that next year will be a both and. We will transcend and include, meaning we'll keep the foundation of what TMI education is all about, and we'll add to it what we learned in a COVID world. We'll be on campus, we'll be in person. We won't have the remote instruction option. Teachers won't have to push back and forth on campus, off campus, but I truly believe that we will transcend and include. So I don't like to say that we'll be back to normal. I think we'll be a new normal and it'll be even better. Another thing I think that's very important that we've seen in COVID, which I hope stays, is the compassion of our students. Our students are compassionate. Oh my gosh, they value each other. They value their teachers, they value relationships, they appreciate their peers and their teachers. And I think that's an important lesson we learned from COVID, how much our students care. I also think that it's reminded us of our value prop, to be honest with you. COVID has reminded me that TMI is not an online school. We are an in-person community that is better and stronger when we're on campus together. I think next year is going to be amazing. Because we belong together and we'll be stronger together. when we take what we learned and add to the strong foundation that was already there. So again, closing comments, 93% of our parents would recommend TMI. That's remarkably high. I hope that number stays high going forward. I don't want next year to go back to normal. I want it to go back to normal plus. I want us to take what we learned, do it even better, be more creative in the classroom, and do it in person. Next year, we're going to have Friday night lights. We're going to have pep rallies. We're going to have fans in the stands. We're going to have parents on campus. We're going to have back to school nights. We're going to be the TMI that you knew and love and fell in love with, and we'll do it safely, and we'll take care of each other, and we'll belong to each other. 55 minutes wraps up all the questions that you submitted. I'm going to turn I'm going to turn my attention to these questions. Will the refectory or cafe reopen this school year? We actually just did a test run of the refectory today because only faculty were on campus. We're going to actually try and open up the refectory this school year, but the reality is that the capacity in there for unmasked eating is only about 50, 60 at most. So we couldn't even get we could get a whole middle school class in there, but you couldn't get like the whole middle school in there. And so when it's beautiful like it is today, who wants to go in the refectory? I mean, it's gorgeous outside. And we're hitting into the spring, but there will be days that we need indoor spaces. And so we're going to try and figure out how to get the refectory but safely back in the rotation for next year. The cafe will reopen next year. It's open now in the morning. I don't know if you know this, but the cafe is open in the morning. It's not open down in the cafe. You have to actually go up to the cafeteria, to the refectory, but you can grab and go tacos and juices in the morning. We're using the cafe as the primary serving line, so I don't see it opening up other than the grab and go options that are open right now. I don't see the cafe opening this school year. Father Scott, please touch on the potential to make up some of the field trips. And by the way, we love you, Father Scott. I love you too. Field trips are a massive part of the TMI experience, especially in the middle school. And so we will, we're already working on next year's calendar, and then we'll try and see what needs to shift. You know how it is, like in this grade, we always get to go to the aquarium and spend the night, and we always get, so we'll try to make sure that we keep those experiences the same, but whether or not we're able to add field trips that they missed this year, you'll know that very soon because we're working on next year's school calendar. Man, I think that's it. I just want to tell you one more time, I love you. I'm grateful for you. I am here to follow up on any questions you have. I'm thankful that you trust us and believe in us. And if your question didn't get answered to the depth that you wanted it to, reach back out to me. Now, you may not like the answer, but I'm going to be honest with you. That's one thing I will commit to all the time, is just being as transparent and honest as I can. It's tough to teach and learn in a COVID world, and I'm proud of our teachers. I'm proud of our students, and I'm grateful for you. I hope you have a wonderful night. I hope you have a wonderful spring break, and I can't wait to see you on campus real soon. Go Panthers. I love you. Bye.